They left her like garbage, but he saw a life worth saving. The blizzard raged with unprecedented fury, transforming the mountain landscape into a white wasteland. Marcus had weathered countless storms in his secluded cabin, but this one felt different, angrier, more desperate. He sat by his fireplace, nursing hot coffee and listening to the wind's mournful song, when an unusual sound cut through the tempest. A soft thud against his door, followed by silence. Curiosity overrode caution as he peered through the frost-covered window. What he saw made his breath catch. A figure collapsed in the snow, barely visible against the white backdrop. Without hesitation, he grabbed his coat and rushed outside. She was unlike anyone he'd ever encountered. Her skin held an otherworldly luminescence, and her hair shimmered with an ethereal quality that defied explanation. Most disturbing was the metallic collar around her neck, clearly marking her as someone's property. Her clothes were inadequate for the harsh climate, and she was unconscious, her breathing shallow. Marcus didn't hesitate. He lifted her carefully, noting how light she felt, and carried her inside. The warmth of his cabin seemed to revive her slightly, and her eyes fluttered open, revealing irises that glowed like amethysts in firelight. She tried to speak, but only weak sounds emerged. Fear flickered across her features as she took in her surroundings, then settled on his face. Something in his gentle expression must have reassured her, because she relaxed slightly, though wariness remained. "You're safe," Marcus said softly, wrapping her in thick blankets. "I won't hurt you." Though she clearly didn't understand his words, his tone conveyed what language could not. She accepted the warm broth he offered, her hands trembling as she held the bowl. Each sip seemed to restore a bit of her strength. As the night progressed, Marcus tended to her with careful attention. He didn't know who she was or where she'd come from, but her obvious suffering touched something deep within him. The collar around her neck spoke of captivity and cruelty, things he couldn't ignore. When she finally slept, curled up near the fire, Marcus watched over her. The storm continued its assault on the mountain, but inside his humble cabin, something had shifted. The loneliness that had been his constant companion for years suddenly felt less overwhelming. He didn't know what morning would bring, but as he looked at the mysterious woman who'd literally fallen into his life, Marcus felt the first stirrings of something he'd thought lost forever: purpose, and perhaps something deeper. Dawn brought clearer skies, but no answers to the questions swirling in Marcus's mind. His unexpected guest stirred as sunlight filtered through the cabin windows, and he watched as awareness slowly returned to her luminous eyes. She sat up carefully, wincing at some unseen pain, and surveyed her surroundings with cautious intelligence. "Good morning," Marcus said gently, offering her a cup of warm tea. She accepted it gratefully, their fingers brushing briefly during the exchange. Her skin felt different, smoother, cooler than human touch, yet unmistakably alive. Communication proved challenging but not impossible. Through gestures and simple words, they began to build a bridge between their vastly different worlds. She pointed to herself and said, "Lyra," in a voice like silver bells. He responded with his own name, which she repeated with careful pronunciation. The collar remained a constant presence, its faint glow serving as a reminder of her mysterious past. Marcus examined it carefully, noting the intricate symbols etched into its surface. His attempts to understand its mechanism were met with patient cooperation from Lyra, though fear occasionally flickered in her eyes when he touched the device. Days blended together as they established a routine. Marcus taught her basic words, while she helped with simple tasks around the cabin. Her intelligence became apparent quickly. She absorbed new concepts with remarkable speed and displayed an intuitive understanding of his needs. During quieter moments, Marcus found himself studying her face, memorizing the way firelight played across her features. There was something ethereal about her beauty, yet her expressions revealed very human emotions: gratitude, curiosity, and an underlying sadness that tugged at his heart. Lyra seemed equally fascinated by him. She watched his daily routines with keen interest, sometimes mimicking his actions with endearing earnestness. When he worked on repairs or prepared meals, she observed everything, learning not just his methods, but his mannerisms. Trust grew slowly between them. When nightmares plagued her sleep, causing her to cry out in languages he didn't recognize, Marcus would speak softly until she calmed. His presence seemed to anchor her to the present, pulling her away from whatever horrors haunted her dreams. One evening, as they sat together by the fire, Lyra reached out tentatively and touched his hand. The gesture was simple but profound, an acknowledgement of the connection forming between them. Marcus turned his palm up, letting their fingers intertwine, and for the first time since her arrival, she smiled. That smile transformed her entire face, erasing the lines of suffering and revealing the radiant being beneath. In that moment, Marcus realized his feelings had evolved beyond mere compassion. This strange, beautiful woman who'd appeared in his life like a gift from the storm had awakened something he'd thought permanently buried. 2 weeks passed in the mountain sanctuary, and the dynamic between Marcus and Lyra had evolved into something neither had expected. Their communication, once limited to gestures and broken words, now flowed with increasing fluency. Lyra's grasp of English improved daily, while Marcus found himself learning phrases in her melodic language. The collar remained their greatest challenge. Marcus spent hours studying its construction, sketching diagrams and testing various approaches to unlock its secrets. Lyra watched these efforts with a mixture of hope and resignation, as if she'd long ago accepted her bondage as permanent. "You don't have to do this," she said one evening, her accent lending music to the English words. "I bring danger." Marcus looked up from his work, meeting her concerned gaze. "You didn't choose to come here, Lyra, but I'm choosing to help you. That's my decision to make." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Why? You know nothing of me, my people, or what I am." "I know enough," Marcus replied firmly. "I know you're kind. I know you have nightmares about the past but still find ways to smile. I know you hum while you work, and that you make sculptures from scraps because creating beauty is part of who you are." Indeed, Lyra's artistic nature had manifested in small ways throughout their time together. She transformed bits of wood and metal into delicate figurines, each one a masterpiece of intricate detail. Her creations decorated the cabin, bringing life to what had been a purely functional space. As winter's grip loosened slightly, they ventured outside together. Lyra marveled at Earth's natural beauty, the way snow crystals caught sunlight, the sound of wind through pine branches, the vast expanse of stars on clear nights. Her wonder was infectious, helping Marcus see his surroundings through fresh eyes. Their physical closeness increased gradually. What began as necessary proximity in the small cabin evolved into comfortable intimacy. They shared meals, worked side by side, and found excuses to touch, a hand on a shoulder, fingers brushing, during shared tasks. One night, as they sat together reading by firelight, Lyra dozed against his shoulder. Marcus remained perfectly still, not wanting to disturb her peaceful rest. The trust implicit in her relaxed posture moved him deeply. This woman who had every reason to fear, especially men who might seek to control her, had found safety in his presence. When she woke, she didn't pull away immediately. Instead, she tilted her face up to look at him, and the moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken possibilities. Marcus raised his hand slowly, giving her every opportunity to retreat, and gently touched her cheek. "Marcus," she whispered, and his name on her lips sounded like a prayer. He leaned down, and she met him halfway. Their first kiss was tender, tentative, a question asked and answered. When they parted, both were breathless. "Is this real?" Lyra asked, her voice barely audible. "More real than anything I've ever felt," Marcus replied, and knew he meant every word. Their relationship had crossed a threshold, moving from rescuer and rescued to something far more complex and beautiful. But even as happiness bloomed between them, the collar's presence served as a constant reminder that their peace might not last forever. Spring's arrival brought more than melting snow. It brought a breakthrough. Marcus had been working tirelessly on the collar's mechanism when Lyra discovered something extraordinary during one of their walks. Half buried beneath winter's debris lay a crystalline fragment that seemed to pulse with inner light. "Marcus, look," she breathed, holding the shard up to catch the sunlight. The crystal's surface contained swirling patterns that matched the symbols on her collar exactly. Back in the cabin, Marcus examined the fragment with growing excitement. When he held it near the collar, both objects responded with subtle vibrations, like tuning forks finding harmony. "This is it," he said, his voice tight with anticipation. "This might be the key." Working together with careful precision, they experimented with the crystal's placement and orientation. Each adjustment brought new responses from the collar, changes in its glow, variations in its hum. Lyra held perfectly still during these attempts, trusting him completely despite the potential risks. As evening settled around them, Marcus made a final adjustment to the crystal's position. Suddenly, the collar's red glow flickered and died. With a soft click that seemed to echo through the cabin, the metallic band sprang open and fell away. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Lyra's hands flew to her throat, touching the unmarked skin where the collar had rested for so long. Tears streamed down her face as the reality of her freedom hit her. "It's gone," she whispered in wonder. "It's really gone." Marcus set down his tools and opened his arms. She flew into his embrace and they held each other tightly, sharing in her liberation. But their celebration was interrupted by an ominous sound from outside, the hum of approaching aircraft. Lyra's joy instantly transformed to terror. "They've found me," she said, pulling away from Marcus. "They've come to take me back." Through the window, they could see lights in the distance, growing brighter as they approached. Without hesitation, Marcus grabbed supplies and weapons while Lyra gathered her few possessions. "There's a cave system in the eastern ridge," Marcus said urgently. "We can hide there until they leave." "No," Lyra said firmly. "If they find us together, they'll hurt you. I won't let that happen." "We stay together," Marcus insisted, taking her hand. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Their escape through the forest was harrowing. Behind them, lights swept the area as their pursuers searched methodically. Marcus led them through paths he'd memorized during years of solitary exploration. But even his knowledge of the terrain might not be enough. When they finally reached the cave, both were exhausted. Deep in the cavern's embrace, they allowed themselves a moment to catch their breath. Lyra leaned against Marcus, drawing strength from his presence. "I love you," she said suddenly, the words emerging like a confession she could no longer contain. Marcus turned to face her fully, cupping her face in his hands. "I love you too, more than I ever thought possible." Their kiss was passionate this time, filled with the urgency of two people who might not have another chance. In the depths of the cave, surrounded by ancient stone and pursued by enemies, they found a moment of perfect connection. But even as they held each other, both knew their time together might be measured in hours rather than years. The world, beyond their mountain sanctuary, was calling, and Lyra would have to answer that call, with or without him. The cave system proved to be more than just a hiding place. It was a gateway to something extraordinary. As they ventured deeper, following instincts Lyra couldn't fully explain, the walls began to show signs of artificial construction. Ancient symbols covered the stone surfaces, many matching those that had adorned her collar. "This place," Lyra murmured, running her fingers along the carved walls. "It feels familiar, like a half-remembered dream." Their path led to a vast underground chamber dominated by a towering crystalline structure that pulsed with the same light as the fragment that had freed her. The moment they entered, the crystal shard in Lyra's possession began resonating with its massive counterpart. A voice filled their minds, not heard but felt, ancient and vast with knowledge. "Welcome, daughter of the stars," it said. "You have found your way home." Lyra stepped forward, drawn by forces beyond her understanding. "What is this place, Killer?" she asked aloud. A repository of your people's history, the voice explained. Built by those who escaped the great enslavement, hidden to preserve the knowledge needed for liberation. As they watched, holographic images filled the air around them, scenes of galactic civilizations, of Lyra's people living in freedom before conquest reduced them to property. The scope of the tragedy was staggering, but so was the hope contained within this hidden archive. The device you now carry contains the power to break the chains that bind your people, the voice continued. But using it will mark you as a target. Your enemies will never stop hunting you. Marcus watched as Lyra absorbed this revelation, seeing the weight of destiny settling on her shoulders. She was no longer just the woman he'd rescued from the storm. She was the key to freeing an entire enslaved species. I have to go back, she said, turning to face him with tears in her eyes. I have to try to help them. I know, Marcus replied, though the words felt like glass in his throat. I've always known this day would come. Come with me, she pleaded suddenly. The universe is vast and there are places we could go together, worlds where we could be free. The temptation was overwhelming. Marcus had found love beyond his wildest dreams, and the thought of losing it felt unbearable. But as he looked at her, he realized that true love sometimes meant making impossible choices. Your people need you to be focused, not divided between duty and personal desires, he said gently. And I belong here on this mountain. It's where I found peace and where I found you. So this is goodbye? Lyra asked, her voice breaking. This is see you again someday, Marcus corrected, pulling her close. In whatever form that takes, in this life or the next, in dreams or in memories. Love like ours doesn't just disappear. The crystalline structure began to glow more brightly, responding to Lyra's presence and the device she carried. A portal of swirling energy materialized, offering passage to distant stars and the mission that awaited her. They held each other one last time, memorizing the feel of being complete. Then, with a courage that took Marcus's breath away, Lyra stepped toward the portal. Thank you, she said, looking back at him with infinite gratitude. For seeing me as more than property, for believing in my freedom, for showing me what love could be. Thank you, Marcus replied, for reminding me that even the loneliest hearts can find their match. With that, she stepped through the portal and vanished in a brilliant flash of light, leaving Marcus alone with echoes of their love and the knowledge that he had helped set in motion something that would change the galaxy forever. The silence that followed Lyra's departure was absolute, broken only by the soft sound of Marcus's breathing and the distant drip of water in the cavern. The crystalline structure had dimmed to a gentle glow, no longer active but somehow peaceful, like a task completed. Marcus stood alone in the vast chamber, feeling the weight of loss and the warmth of purpose intertwined. He made his way back through the cave system slowly, each step taking him further from the miraculous and back toward the mundane. But as he emerged into the mountain air, he realized that nothing would ever be mundane again. The world looked different now, charged with possibilities he'd never imagined. The cabin, when he reached it, bore signs of the search that had driven them into hiding. His pursuers had been thorough but not destructive, clearly more interested in finding Lyra than damaging property. They were gone now, their mission seemingly abandoned with her disappearance. In the days that followed, Marcus struggled to find his rhythm without her. The silence that had once been his companion now felt oppressive. Every corner of the cabin held memories, the chair where she'd sat while learning English, the workspace where she'd created her delicate sculptures, the bed where they'd shared quiet conversations before sleep. But gradually, something else began to emerge from his grief, a sense of expansion rather than loss. Lyra had awakened parts of himself he'd forgotten existed. The recluse who had once hidden from the world now felt connected to something vast and meaningful. He began to write, documenting their story not just as a record but as a testament to the transformative power of love. The manuscript grew daily, becoming both memoir and meditation on what it meant to truly see another person and be seen in return. Weeks later, While organizing supplies, Marcus discovered something that stopped him cold. Hidden among his tools was a small package wrapped in cloth, one of Lyra's crystalline sculptures, impossibly intricate and beautiful. Attached was a note in her careful handwriting. For the man who taught me that freedom begins in the heart. Until we meet again, know that love is the strongest force in any universe. That evening, as he held the sculpture up to the firelight, something extraordinary happened. The crystal began to glow softly, and for just a moment, he could swear he felt her presence, warm, loving, and proud. Whether it was imagination, some property of her alien craft, or something deeper, it didn't matter. The connection between them transcended physical distance. Months passed, then seasons. Marcus began to notice changes in himself and his surroundings. His garden grew more abundantly than ever before. Wild animals approached without fear, as if sensing a fundamental shift in his energy. Travelers occasionally found their way to his cabin, drawn by stories of a hermit who offered wisdom along with shelter. To each visitor, Marcus offered hospitality, and, when appropriate, pieces of the story that had changed his life. He spoke of love that transcended species and worlds, of the courage required to let someone go so they could become who they were meant to be, and of the lasting power of connections forged in truth and sacrifice. Some listeners thought him touched by mountain madness. Others recognized the deep peace that surrounded him, the contentment of a man who had loved completely and been completely loved in return, even briefly. On clear nights, Marcus would stand outside his cabin and look up at the stars, wondering which one might shelter the woman who had transformed his existence. He imagined her fighting for her people's freedom, using the gifts she'd discovered to break chains across the galaxy. The thought filled him with pride and purpose. And sometimes, just sometimes, one star would seem to pulse a little brighter than the others, as if responding to his gaze. In those moments, Marcus would smile and whisper, "Until we meet again, my love, until we meet again." Their story had ended, but their love continued, written in starlight, carried on mountain winds, and preserved in the heart of a man who had learned that true love never truly ends. It only transforms into something eternal and beautiful, connecting souls across any distance and transcending any boundary the universe might create.